I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and this is a city that ranks 63rd most dangerous in the world. You can see the graffiti's already starting. It's on both sides. This is like paid graffiti here, but the graffiti's on both sides. It ranks top 5 most dangerous in Indiana, and like I said, 63rd most dangerous in the world. And most of the crime in the state of Indiana, well, there really is a lot of graffiti. Most of the crime in the state of Indiana comes from Indianapolis, and they say Evansville as well contributes a lot, although Evansville's stats don't come across nearly as bad as Indianapolis's do. This is the largest city in Indiana. Gosh, I can't even speak. Indianapolis is the largest city in Indiana, and it's also the state capital, and it's the 16th largest city in America. The population is around 876,000, and it was steadily rising until 2020, and now it's declining, and that was a problem that a lot of U.S. cities saw. The summer of Floyd destroyed a lot of cities. Well, it made a lot of places, but Tennessee and Florida saw an influx of people moving in, and you know, places like this, Indianapolis, just saw people moving out. And it was a city that was rising, and it's just not anymore. The crime got out of control, and people just started leaving these places. It's 50% white, 28% black, 11% Hispanic, and 5% Asian. So it's pretty diverse as far as their population goes. The average age is 34, and 17% of the adults are seniors. So it's a younger population. There's a 55% homeownership rate, which is, I consider anything over 50% to be good, although that's still below the national average for homeownership. I personally consider anything over 50% good, just because the more people that own a home in a city, the more likely it'll be on the safer side. Now, that's not really the case here, but the more people you have renting and the more people you have crammed into a small area, the higher the crime is going to be. So if you got a bunch of apartment buildings and you're cramming a bunch of people into them, the crime's going to be higher than if you have people that are owning their houses that are kind of spread out, and they, you know, each have their own little, you know, space to do what they want in. The average earnings here are around $44,000 a year, which is pretty good for a city that's, wow, the graffiti. It's pretty good for a city that's got higher crime. And I think we'll turn up here. Check out a little more of this, get off that main road there. What am I turning into? Okay, not what I was trying to turn into, this tunnel. What is that? What are those things hanging there? What are those things hanging there? You think that's a decoration or something? That was really weird. This must be like a transit hub or something that I turned into. I don't know what those things hanging there were, though. Those things look weird. Well, the graffiti under here isn't as bad as one would. There's a lot of graffiti, but it's not as bad as one would have expected to see. So, $44,000 a year, 16% poverty rate. Again, 16% poverty rate might sound pretty high. That's on the low side. 16% for a city this size. 16% is actually pretty good. And there's a 39% marriage rate, which also might sound like it's on the lower side, but that's actually really good too. It's a huge intersection. 65% of the people that live here were born either here in Indianapolis or in Indiana. And 7% are considered non-citizens. So I imagine if you're releasing a stat of 7% non-citizens, the non-citizens probably closer to 10 or 11, just because you know that there's no way they're all reported as non-citizens. Prior to 2020, the homicides were around 150 a year. Since 2020, the homicides have been over 200 a year. So that might be a good reason why people were moving out. Because literally they went up from 150 to 200. They went up 50 or more a year in the homicides. That's a lot to go up. So the murder rates are in the 23 to 27 range. Chicago's like 22. So the murder rates here are higher than that of Chicago. Another reason people are probably moving out. Chicago's murder rate, actually, considering, I mean, the murder rates go on a per 100,000 person basis, so it's 100% based on the population. And Chicago, we're back in these tunnels again. Yep, lots of graffiti. That looks like they just painted over some of it. Homeless person laying there. That must be cold. It's not even that warm out. And he's laying right in that darkness there. It's probably really cold. The murder rates and the assault rates and all that are based on a per 100,000 person basis. So it's based on your population. So having a murder rate higher than that of Chicago would put up probably 7 times, well, actually not if they're putting up 200. Chicago put up about 4 times the number of homicides in a year, but it's also 3 or 4 times bigger. So Chicago can absorb that. Here the murder rates are getting up there. The assault rates have been in the 700 to 800s going back like for the last 10 years. Chicago's in like the 550s for their assault rates, and Baltimore's in the 900s for their assault rates. So it's 700 to 800s. That puts you somewhere between Chicago and Baltimore as far as the assaults go. And the theft rates, actually, they went down after 2020. That was a surprising stat I found, that the theft rates actually went down. They were over 3,000, in the 3,000s, and now they're in the like 2,300. It's not a huge drop, and that they had a theft rate that was pretty much right around the national average. So now they're doing pretty good as far as at least the property crime goes. Their violent crime here as a whole is 178% higher than the national average, which I always say everything between that like 80 to 100% higher is regular city bad, what you'd expect from a city. So when you start getting up into the 2s or closer to the 200s, it starts getting into that iffier category. So they're not quite to the iffier, or not quite to the iffy category where, you know, you're really starting to pay attention and you're worried about things. But it's definitely a place where you gotta be aware of where you're at. It's definitely not something where, you know, you can just walk freely and feel safe. Your odds of becoming a victim of a crime here are 1 in 23. For perspective on that, a really bad city will be 1 in 8, 9, 10. Those are the really bad cities. So 1 in 23 is fairly typical. And the year-over-year crime here is showing an increase of 6%. So that's something that they really kind of need to get a handle on, because 6% might not sound like a lot. And in 1 year, you know, if you had 100 homicides, that would be it going up by 6. Going from 100 to 106. Or they're in the 200s, going from 200 to 212. That would be a 6% increase. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but you do that a couple of years in a row, and you're going to find yourself in some situations that you can't really get yourself out of. Especially if they're not doing a good job of putting the guys in jail that are doing this stuff. The cost of living here is better than the national average. Housing is 6% lower. That's kind of a cool intersection. Going under that thing, that was kind of a cool intersection. Housing is 6% lower, and that explains probably why there's a 55% home ownership rate, is that it's cheaper to buy a house here than most American cities. So that's probably why the home ownership is as high as it is. When you get to the schooling though, only 33%, so 1 out of every 3 of the students graduate proficient at reading and math. 1 out of 3 can read and do math at a 12th grade level. Indiana as a state is 46% graduate proficient at reading and math, and the American national average is 48%. So less than half the kids in America graduate at a 12th grade level of reading and math. It's even less in Indiana, but not by a ton, and way less here in Indianapolis. So 1 out of 2 in America and about 1 out of 3 in Indianapolis graduate at a level that they should be at for, getting their diploma. 82% of the people that live here, let me get over. 82% of the people that live here completed the 8th grade. And only 81% have a high school diploma or equivalent. That's not uncommon. It's not even really what I would call low. It's on the lower side, but it's kind of just what America is these days. America is not a place that educates their students. America is not, they put this emphasis on education, but it's not real. They're not really trying to teach these kids anything, because they're not, if they were, the kids would be learning something, and they're not. So 33% of the 81% that do graduate equals 26% of the population is proficient at reading and math. 26% can do math at a 12th grade level. That's 1 in every 4. That's not a big number. That's not a number that is going to help make things better as far as crime in your city goes. You already have not a lot of people graduating, but you got 4 out of every 5 graduate. That's not a good number. And only 1 out of every 3 of those can do math and read at a 12th grade level when they do graduate. So 1 out of every 4 people can go on and probably get a better job or get a good job. The rest may or may not even be qualified to work even entry-level positions at most jobs. And I wish I could say that that was uncommon or rare, but that's literally where we're at in America. I go through these cities and it's the same story in all of them. Every once in a while you'll come across a city that actually teaches, or a state even that teaches their kids. Virginia, they teach the kids something there. You can have whatever opinion you want on Virginia, but they actually teach the kids something. And it's just like, you get these cities with high crime, and it's like you have to ask yourself, what do you expect from these kids? Like, literally, what does anybody expect from these kids? We're just passing the Indianapolis Zoo. I just saw a sign for it. It's right here on our right. But I don't know what they expect from these kids when they release them out into the world and they don't have the ability to better their own lives. Say what you want about America, but if you try here, you really can go from nothing up to whatever level you want to be at. But if you're not giving the kids the skills to do that, they're not going to do that. And a lot of them are just going to sit there and they're going to break the law because that's easier and quicker to get money doing that than it is to go get a real job and, you know, work your way up and, you know, make something out of yourself. And if you don't have the skills to even do that, and the only skills you have is to go out and steal the stuff that you have, then that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to let this just play out a little bit longer. We're kind of on the outskirts now. Well, we're outside of the downtown. I don't know what neighborhood we're in, but we're definitely on the outskirts of downtown. We'll probably go under this bridge up here, this train bridge. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of graffiti under this one too. Oh, that actually looks like somebody painted a picture. Well, there's graffiti on the picture they painted. Yep, that's all graffiti too. It looked like a bridge that was going to have a bunch of graffiti on it. So basically, some of what I saw is that this is a city not unlike most American cities, unfortunately. And the stats are that it's, you know, and it ranks literally, what was it, the 63rd most dangerous in the world? There's a lot of U.S. states that make that list of the most dangerous in the world. A lot of them. You know, and it's not just Chicago. You got Memphis is on there. You got, I mean, it's a lot of the U.S. cities make that list of the most dangerous in the world. And Baltimore's on it. It's, name a city that's got high crime, it's on there as one of the worst in the world. And Indianapolis is no different. It's actually, there's litter on the side of the road, but it's actually not as bad. I mean, you can see there's kind of a lot right there, but it's not as bad as you would kind of think or expect it to be. The graffiti was pretty bad, but it was mostly in places like under bridges and in places that you would expect to see it. It's not just splattered all over every building like some cities have. But I'm just going to let this play out for a little bit. I hope you learned something from this. I know I learned something every time I do one of these. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you're not already, consider subscribing. And I'll catch you on the next one.